That Christmas night, my family laughed like they were watching a comedy special, thinking I was only worth $200. But when I thanked my grandmother, she went pale. She squeezed my hand under the table and whispered that she had actually wired me $2 million. Right then, watching them eat turkey, I realized the money had not vanished. It had been diverted by the very people sitting next to me. My name is Stella Perry, and I have spent 34 years serving as the punchline to a joke I never agreed to participate in. If you looked at my life on paper, you would see a perfectly functional, independent adult. I pay my own rent in the city. I have a 401k. I work in risk management at a mid-sized firm where people respect my ability to spot discrepancies in a spreadsheet from across the room. But none of that matters when I cross the county line into Briar Hollow. To the people gathered around this mahogany dining table, I am simply Stella the screw-up, the black sheep, the one who requires managing. The air inside my mother's house was always thinner than the air outside, as if the oxygen had been sucked out to preserve the furniture. It was Christmas night, and the residence was staged like a magazine spread. My mother, Paula, had outdone herself. The garland on the banister was real balsam. The candles were beeswax, and the tension was so thick you could carve it with the silver knife sitting next to my untouched turkey. We were all there, playing our assigned roles in the family theater. There was Mason, my older brother, the golden boy who could burn down a building and be praised for the warmth of the fire. There was Brooke, my younger sister, the social butterfly whose entire personality was curated for social media engagement. And then there was me, sitting at the far end of the table near the kitchen door, the designated audience member for their success. But the most important person in the room was sitting to my right, my grandmother, Marjorie Dalton Maggs. As I called her, looked frail this year. Her skin was like parchment paper, translucent and delicate, and she seemed to shrink inside her heavy wool cardigan. Maggs was the only person in this bloodline who looked at me and saw a person rather than a project. Dinner had been a marathon of backhanded compliments. Paula had spent 20 minutes praising Brooke's bravery for buying a new house in this economy, followed by a pointed question to me about whether I was still renting that charming little shoebox downtown. I had learned long ago that defense was futile. In the Perry household, silence was the only shield that worked. Then came the main event. Paula clapped her hands together, the sharp sound cutting through the low hum of jazz playing on the speakers. "All right, everyone," Paula announced, her voice pitched an octave higher than natural. "Gifts. We are doing gifts before dessert this year. Mother, you go first." This was not a request. It was a command. Paula loved the ritual of public gifting because it established the hierarchy. It was never about generosity. It was about display. She gestured toward a small pile of envelopes on the sideboard. "Actually," Paula said, her eyes locking onto mine with a predator's focus, "let's start with Stella. Mother prepared something for everyone, but she wanted to make sure Stella got hers." My stomach tightened. I knew this setup. It was the annual humiliation ritual. The goal was to give me something visibly less than the others, wait for a crack in my composure, and then call me ungrateful if I showed a single micro-expression of disappointment. Last year, it had been a gift card to a grocery store while Mason got a set of golf clubs. The year before, a self-help book on budgeting while Brooke got diamond studs. Paula slid a cream-colored envelope across the polished wood. It stopped right in front of my water glass. "Go on, honey," Brooke urged, swirling her wine. "Open it." I looked at Grandma Maggs. She was staring at her plate, her hand trembling slightly as she gripped her napkin. She looked exhausted, almost sedated. I felt a surge of protective anger. They were using her to get to me. I picked up the envelope. It was light. I broke the seal with my thumbnail, keeping my face perfectly neutral. I was a professional. I dealt with fraud and risk for a living. I could handle a passive-aggressive Christmas present. I reached inside and pulled out the contents. It was 2 $100 bills. The silence in the room lasted exactly 1 second before the snickering started. It wasn't loud. Raucous laughter. It was worse. It was the polite, pitying chuckle of people who feel superior. Oh, that is nice, Mason said, leaning back in his chair. Gas money for the drive home, right. Stell, Brooke covered her mouth, her eyes dancing with malicious glee. That is sweet, Grandma. It is good to help Stella out with the basics. Every little bit helps when you are situated like she is. Paula offered me a sad, tight smile. It is the thought that counts. Stella, don't be rude. $200 is a lot of money for some people. They were waiting for it. They were waiting for me to blush, to look down, to cry, or to snap back so they could call me unstable. They wanted the Stella show. I refused to give it to them. I took a breath, folded the 2 bills neatly, and placed them back in the envelope. I turned my chair slightly toward Grandma Maggs. I ignored the smirk on Mason's face. I ignored Paula's watchful stare. I focused entirely on the woman who had taught me how to read and how to survive. Thank you, Grandma, I said, my voice steady and warm. I meant it. If Maggs had $5 to her name and gave me one, I would value it more than $1 million from Paula. I appreciate it, really. I reached out and gently covered her cold, trembling hand with mine. That was when the air in the room changed. Maggs did not smile back. She did not nod. Instead, her head snapped up. Her eyes, usually cloudy with age, suddenly sharpened into a terrifying clarity. The color drained from her face so fast she looked like a ghost. She gripped my hand back. Her grip was surprisingly strong, almost painful, like a person hanging off a cliff edge. 200, she whispered. The laughter at the table died down. But not completely. Paula was still smiling, reaching for the wine bottle. Yes, Mother, 200. You were very generous. Maggs ignored her daughter. She stared straight into my eyes, and I saw genuine terror there. No, Maggs rasped. Her voice was shaking, but the words were distinct. No, Stella, I did not give you $200. It is okay, Grandma, I soothed, thinking she was embarrassed by the small amount compared to what the others likely got. It is perfect. I love it. You do not understand, Maggs said, her voice rising, cracking with panic. She squeezed my hand so hard her knuckles turned white. I wired the money. I went to the bank. I wired $2 million to your account last Tuesday. The silence that followed was absolute. It was not the silence of confusion. It was the silence of a bomb that had just landed in the center of the table and was ticking down. I froze. I looked at the envelope in my hand. Then I looked back at Maggs. $2 million. Mother, do not be silly, Paula said. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the quiet like a whip. But I noticed something. She did not look at Grandma. She looked at Mason. You are confused. The doctor said this might happen. You are mixing up your numbers again. I am not confused, Maggs snapped, showing a flash of the iron will she used to have before she got sick. I sold the land in Montana. I wired the proceeds to Stella, all of it, $2 million. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Mason cleared his throat loudly. Grandma, let's get you some water. You are talking crazy. There is no land in Montana anymore. That was sold years ago. I sold it last week, Maggs insisted, her chest heaving. She looked at me, pleading. Stella, check your phone. Check your bank. I sent it. I wanted you to have it all so you could get away from this. I sat there, paralyzed. My mind was racing. $2 million. Maggs had always told me she had put something aside for me, something she kept hidden from Paula's prying eyes, but I had assumed it was an old jewelry box or a few savings bonds. I looked around the table, and that is when I saw it. Usually, when an elderly relative starts talking nonsense at a holiday dinner, the family reaction is a mix of concern, pity, and embarrassment. You worry about their health. You look at each other with sad eyes. That was not what I was seeing. Paula was gripping the stem of her wine glass so hard I thought it would shatter. Her face wasn't sad. It was pale, ashen. She was breathing shallowly, her eyes darting between Maggs and the hallway, as if looking for an escape route. Brooke had stopped scrolling on her phone. She was staring at the tablecloth, her jaw clenched tight. She looked like a child waiting to be scolded. And Mason was sweating. A single bead of perspiration was trickling down his temple. Despite the cool temperature of the room, they were not worried that Grandma was losing her mind. They were terrified that she was telling the truth. "I need to check something," I said, instinctively reaching for my purse where my phone was. "No," Paula practically shouted. She stood up, her chair scraping violently against the floor. "Stella, put the phone away. Can't you see you are upsetting her? This is exactly why we didn't want to talk finances tonight. Mother is clearly having an episode." "I am not having an episode," Mags cried out, tears starting to form in her eyes. "I signed the paper. Paula, you drove me. You drove me to the credit union." "I drove you to the doctor," Paula yelled back, her composure cracking. "My God, this is unbearable. Mason, help me get her to the guest room. She needs to lie down immediately." Mason shot up like a soldier obeying a drill sergeant. "Right. Come on. Grandma, let's go." They were moving too fast. They were trying to scrub the scene. They were trying to separate the witness from the investigator. I stayed seated, my hands still resting on the table next to the envelope with the $200. My brain, trained to analyze fraud patterns and identify theft at Arkstone Meridian Group, finally kicked into gear. I stopped being the daughter and started being the analyst. I looked at Mason as he rounded the table to grab Grandma's arm. As he reached out, his suit jacket sleeve rode up. Glinting under the chandelier light was a watch. It was not just a nice watch, it was a Patek Philippe Nautilus. I knew that watch. I had investigated an insurance claim involving one 3 months ago. The retail price was somewhere around $130,000. Mason worked in consulting, a job title that mostly involved borrowing money from Paula and talking about deals that never closed. He had been complaining about his credit card debt at Thanksgiving. My eyes shifted to Brooke. She was still staring down, nervously twisting her napkin. Outside, in the driveway, sat her new Range Rover. She had made a point of bragging about it when she arrived. "Paid cash," she had said, flipping her hair. "Finally had a good quarter with the design firm." Brooke's design firm had not had a client in 6 months. I knew that because she had asked me to loan her rent money in October. The math fell into place with a sickening thud. $2 million wired, $200 received, a sudden luxury watch, a cash-bought luxury SUV, and a grandmother being gaslit into believing she was senile. It was not a mistake. It was not a banking error. The money had not disappeared into the ether. It had been intercepted. They had eaten my future. They had carved it up like the turkey sitting in the center of the table, and now they were wiping the grease off their chins while laughing at me for being hungry. "Get off me!" Mag shouted as Mason tried to hoist her up. "Mason, be gentle," I said. My voice was low, but it had a steel edge to it that I had never used in this house before. Mason froze. He looked at me. For the first time in his life, he didn't look at me with contempt. He looked at me with fear. "We are just taking her to rest." "Stella," Mason stammered. "She is confused." "Is she?" I asked. I picked up the envelope with the $200 and tapped it against the table. The sound was rhythmic, like a judge's gavel, because she seems pretty specific about the amount. "Mason, $2 million is a very specific number to invent." "Don't start, Stella," Paula hissed, coming around to grab Mags's other arm. "Do not make this about you. You always ruin Christmas." "I am not ruining anything," I said, standing up slowly. I did not scream. I did not flip the table. I did not cry. I looked at the watch on Mason's wrist, and then I looked directly at the keys to the Range Rover sitting by Brooke's plate. I smiled. It was not a nice smile. "I am just saying thank you," I continued, my eyes locking on Paula's terrified face. "Grandma wanted to give me a gift, and I think she did. I think she gave me the most interesting gift I have ever received." "What are you talking about?" Paula demanded, her voice shrill. "Clarity," I said. I pocketed the $200. "Take her to lie down," I said, stepping back to let them pass. "I will be right here. I am not going anywhere." As they hurried Mags out of the room, the old woman looked back over her shoulder at me, her eyes desperate. I gave her a small, imperceptible nod. I needed them to leave the room. I needed them to think they had contained the situation. Because the moment they left the room, the dining table became a crime scene, and I was the lead investigator. And I had a feeling that if I looked closely enough at the paperwork scattered on the sideboard, or the notifications on the phones they had carelessly left on the table, I would find the first thread. They thought the $200 was a joke. They didn't realize it was evidence. I looked at the half-eaten feast. The checkmate wasn't going to happen tonight. Tonight was for gathering intelligence. But as I stood there in the silence of the dining room, listening to my mother frantically whispering to my brother in the hallway, I knew one thing for certain. I was going to get my money, every single cent of it, and I was going to burn their perfect little world to the ground to get it. Standing alone in the dining room, surrounded by the debris of a holiday meal that had imploded before the pumpkin pie was even served, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. It was the same icy detachment I felt when I opened a fresh case file at work. To understand the crime, you have to understand the environment that created the criminal, and to understand why my mother and siblings had just conspired to steal $2 million from an old woman, you had to understand the ecosystem of the Perry household. I did not grow up in a home. I grew up on a stage. My mother, Paula, was not a parent. She was a director. And her children were props designed to reflect light back onto her. In the economy of our family, affection was not a birthright. It was a wage, and it was paid out strictly based on performance metrics that only Paula understood. Mason was the star asset. From the time he was 5 years old, he learned that his failures were actually the world's fault. If he failed a math test, the teacher was incompetent. If he got cut from the varsity team, the coach was biased. Paula spent 30 years insulating Mason from consequence, building a golden cage of delusion around him. She taught him that he was entitled to success without the labor of earning it. It was no surprise he had grown into a man who wore a $100,000 watch while drowning in debt. He had been trained to believe that looking rich was the same thing as being rich. Brooke was the PR department. Her job was to be beautiful, bubbly, and socially viable. She was the one Paula trotted out at country club luncheons. Brooke learned early on that truth was flexible. If the reality was messy, you just put a filter on it. You cropped out the ugly parts. You smiled until your jaw ached. She became a master of the polite lie, the social lubricant that kept the gears of Briar Hollow turning. And then there was me. I was the control group. I was the baseline against which their brilliance was measured. There was never any physical violence in our house. People in Briar Hollow did not hit their children. That would leave marks. And marks were evidence. No. The violence in the Perry house was much more sophisticated. It was surgical. It was 1,000 tiny cuts administered with a smile. It was Paula introducing us to strangers. This is Mason. He is going to be a CEO one day. This is Brooke. Isn't she just a doll? And this is Stella. She is very practical. It was the way my achievements were acknowledged with a pause, a sigh, and a pivot. When I graduated college with honors, Paula looked at my diploma and said, "It is good you have a degree. Stella, you are going to need to rely on your brain, since you did not get Brooke's height." When I bought my own car, a reliable sedan, Mason laughed and asked if it came with a handicap sticker. When I got my first apartment, Brooke came over, looked at my furniture, and offered to send me links to charity shops that have decent stuff. I was the designated failure. Every family like ours needs one. I was the vessel into which they poured their insecurities. If Stella was the mess, then they must be the successes. If Stella was difficult, then they were the easygoing ones. If Stella was cold, then they were the warm, loving family. They needed me to be less so they could feel like more. For a long time, I believed them. I spent my 20s thinking there was something fundamentally broken in my machinery. I tried to be softer. I tried to be louder. I tried to fit into the jagged hole they had carved out for me. But nothing worked, because the game was rigged. You cannot win a game where the rules are rewritten every time you roll the dice. So, I stopped playing. I retreated into the one thing they could not touch: my mind. I became an observer. I learned to sit at these dinners, just like the one tonight, and watch them. I cataloged their micro-expressions. I tracked the subtle shifts in tone when Paula wanted something. I memorized the patterns of Mason's bravado and Brooke's manipulation. I turned my trauma into a career. My family thinks I am a secretary, or maybe an administrative assistant. They have never really asked, and I've never corrected them. Stella works in an office, Paula tells her friends, waving her hand vaguely as if I work in a basement sorting mail. It pays the bills, I suppose. In reality, I am a senior risk analyst for the Arkstone Meridian Group. My job is to look at complex corporate structures, identify anomalies, and find the money that people are trying to hide. I spend my days hunting down embezzlement, fraud, and asset misappropriation. I trace wire transfers through shell companies. I interview executives who think they are smarter than me. I find the rot inside the foundation. I am very, very good at it. The irony was almost poetic. The very skills I developed to survive my mother's gaslighting, the hypervigilance, the ability to read subtext, the obsessive memory for detail, were the exact skills that made me a nightmare for white-collar criminals. My family saw a quiet, mousy woman who couldn't find a husband. Arkstone Meridian Group saw a forensic bloodhound. But there was one person who saw the whole picture. One person who looked at me and didn't see a disappointment. Grandma Maggs. The memory hit me hard. Standing there in the silence. It was from 3 years ago. I had been visiting Maggs at her small cottage before Paula moved her into the main house. For her own safety. We were sitting on her back porch, shelling peas. It was a mundane task. But with Maggs, the silence was never heavy. It was companionable. She had stopped working, her gnarled hands resting in the metal bowl. She looked at me with those sharp, blue eyes that missed nothing. "You are not like them, Stella," she had said. It wasn't a question. "I know," I had replied, feeling that familiar sting of shame. "I am sorry, Grandma." "Do not be sorry," she snapped. Surprising me, she reached out and grabbed my wrist. "You listen to me. Being a Perry is a curse. They are vampires. Stella, they feed on appearances. They feed on each other. But you are different. You are solid. You are real." She had leaned in close, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "They think you are weak because you do not fight them," she said. "But I see you. I see you watching. You are biding your time. You are the only one of them who knows how to survive without sucking the life out of someone else." I had not known what to say. I had never felt seen in my life until that moment. "One day," Maggs had said, squeezing my wrist, "one day, I am going to pay you back for it." "Pay me back for what?" I asked. "For surviving," she said fiercely. "For taking the hits so they didn't have to hit each other. For being the one who stayed human in a house full of ghosts. I will make sure you get what is yours. Stella, I will balance the ledger." At the time, I thought she meant she would leave me her vintage brooch, or maybe her collection of first edition books. I never imagined she meant the proceeds from the Montana land sale. I never imagined she was sitting on a nuclear bomb of cash, waiting for the right moment to detonate it. She had tried to give me my exit strategy tonight. She had tried to hand me the keys to my freedom, and they had taken it. My eyes drifted to the sideboard where Paula kept her achievement shrine. There was a framed photo of Mason holding a trophy from a debate tournament he had actually lost. But Paula had bought him a replica trophy so he wouldn't feel bad. There was a photo of Brooke in her prom dress, airbrushed to perfection. There were no photos of me, for years. That absence hurt. But tonight, looking at the empty space where my face should have been, I felt a surge of power. If you are invisible, nobody sees you coming. They had underestimated me for 34 years. They thought I was the scapegoat. They thought I was the punchline. They thought I was the girl who would take $200 and say thank you because she was desperate for their approval. They did not know they were locked in a house with a fraud investigator who had just been handed the case of a lifetime. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I did not have to worry about being rude anymore. The social contract of this family had been breached the moment they intercepted that wire transfer. I unlocked the screen and opened my Notes app. I started a new file. I did not title it Family. I titled it Case Number 774. Perry. I typed 3 lines. Subject: unauthorized redirection of funds. Victim: Marjorie Dalton. Suspects: Paula Perry, Mason Perry, Brooke Perry. I looked up from the screen. The dining room was quiet, but I could hear the muffled sounds of argument coming from the guest wing. They were fighting over how to handle Mags. They were stressed. They were sloppy. I was not stressed. I was working. I walked over to the table where Brooke had been sitting. I picked up her wine glass. There was a smudge of lipstick on the rim. I set it back down. Then I noticed something else. In her haste to help Paula drag Grandma out of the room, Brooke had left her clutch purse unzipped on the chair. I could see the corner of a folded piece of paper sticking out. It looked like a receipt. I glanced toward the hallway. No sound of footsteps. I reached out and gently slid the paper from the purse. It wasn't a receipt. It was a deposit slip carbon copy. It was dated 4 days ago. The amount was just under $10,000, the exact threshold to avoid automatic federal reporting requirements. I took a photo of it, slid it back exactly as I found it, and stepped away. The scapegoat was dead. The investigator was awake, and as I looked at the glittering Christmas tree in the corner, I made a promise to the only person in this house who mattered. I heard you. Mags. I thought, you wanted to pay me for surviving. But I am going to take my payment for something else. I am going to charge them a retrieval fee. To understand the crime scene, I had to rewind the tape in my mind. I had to look at the preamble to this disaster, because in risk management, the red flags never appear during the explosion. They appear weeks before, waving softly in the breeze, begging to be noticed. The invitation to this Christmas dinner had been the first anomaly. Usually, the holiday summons was a passive-aggressive text from my mother, Paula, sent 3 days in advance, essentially daring me to say no so she could play the martyr. But this year, the campaign had started in early December. Paula had called me, actually called, with her voice, not a text, and her tone was dipped in saccharin. She talked about healing and new beginnings. She mentioned that Mason was finally settling down and that Brooke was dying to see me. Then came the follow-up from Brooke. My sister never texted me unless she needed money or a designated driver. Yet, 2 days before Christmas, she sent me a message with a string of heart emojis. Please make sure you come on time. We want the whole family together for the gifts. It is going to be a moment. A moment. That was the specific word she used. Not a memory. A moment. In the vocabulary of the influencer generation, a moment is something staged for consumption. It is content, now. Standing in the hallway while my family wrestled my grandmother into the back bedroom, I replayed my arrival. I realized I had walked onto a set. When I had first entered the house that evening, the lighting had been meticulously adjusted. But it was the technology that should have tipped me off. I had noticed Brooke's phone propped up against a crystal vase on the sideboard, the lens facing the dining chair I was assigned to. At the time, I thought she was just lazy. Then I saw Mason's phone balanced on the mantel, also angled toward the table. Just capturing the ambiance, Paula had chirped when I asked. Time-lapse video. It is the trend. It was not a time-lapse. They were multiple camera angles. They had set up a perimeter. They wanted high-definition footage of Stella Perry opening an envelope containing $200. They wanted my face cracking. They wanted the tear. They wanted the outburst. They had likely planned to send the video to the extended family group chat with a caption about how ungrateful and unstable I was, further cementing my role as the family pariah, while they sat on a pile of stolen millions. It was a setup, a calculated, premeditated production. I moved quietly toward the kitchen. The house was an open-concept layout, but the sightlines were blocked by a massive floral arrangement Paula had commissioned for the holiday. I needed to be invisible. I needed to see what they had tried to hide in the wings. I remembered hearing Mason earlier in the evening, before dinner was served. I had gone to the powder room and paused near the library door. The voices inside were hushed, frantic. "Keep it clean later, okay?" Mason had said. His voice was tight, stressed. No trouble. We get the reaction. We cut the cake. We get her out the door. She is going to make a face, Brooke had replied. You know she is. Let her, Mason had snapped. The worse she looks, the better we look for handling her. Just stick to the script. Stick to the script. At the time, I assumed they were talking about managing my bad attitude. Now I knew they were talking about managing a felony. I pushed the kitchen door open with my shoulder. The room was bright, sterile, and smelled of roasted meat and sage. This was the staging area. Dirty dishes were stacked in the sink, masked by the frantic energy of the meal service. But I wasn't looking at the dishes. I was looking at the counter where Paula sorted the mail. My grandmother, Mags, had arrived late. She had walked in clutching a worn paper shopping bag. Looking frail but determined, I remembered Paula swooping in like a hawk, taking the bag from her hands immediately. I will put this away for you, Mother. You do not want to clutter the table, Mags had protested, weakly. My papers are in there, for Stella. Stella can see them later, Paula had said, her voice carrying that terrifying finality. Let's eat first. I scanned the granite countertops. The paper bag was gone. Paula had likely locked it in her study or thrown it in the trunk of her car, but people who commit crimes of opportunity often get sloppy with the debris. They focus on the big object, the bag, the money, and forget the scraps. There, shoved behind the knife block, was a crumpled ball of paper. I walked over, my heart hammering against my ribs, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of the hunt. I smoothed out the paper on the cold stone surface. It was a bank envelope. The logo in the corner was for the Hollow Creek Credit Union. It was not a major national bank. It was a small, local institution where Mags had banked for 40 years. The front of the envelope had writing on it, in Mags's shaky, distinct cursive. It read, "For Stella," the full amount. But someone had placed a piece of masking tape over my name, and written on the tape, in thick black marker, was a single word, gas. The cruelty of it took my breath away for a second. It wasn't enough to steal the $2 million. They had to turn the container of the gift into a weapon. They had taken the envelope meant to change my life, taped over my identity, and reduced it to gas money. Then I saw the other piece of paper. It was lying flat near the toaster, half covered by a linen napkin. I lifted the napkin. It was a carbon copy of a transaction receipt, the kind you get when you ask a teller to print out your balance. It was dated today. Balance $2,400. This was Mags's checking account. The wire transfer confirmation was missing. They had sanitized the scene, or so they thought, but they had left the wrapper. This envelope proved Mags had intended to give me something specific, something she had labeled, and the gas tape proved that someone, Paula or Mason, had altered the labeling to match the $200 they stuffed inside. I pulled out my phone. I didn't just take a photo. I took a video. I filmed the envelope, the tape, the handwriting, and the receipt. I filmed the kitchen to establish the location. I filmed the timestamp on the microwave. I had the physical evidence of tampering. Now I needed the confession. I could hear footsteps coming back down the hallway. The heavy, angry tread of my mother. She is asleep, Paula was saying, her voice loud enough to carry. Thank God. I gave her one of her calming pills. She was completely hysterical. She really believes it, Mom, Brooke's voice chimed in, sounding shaky. She really thinks she has $2 million. It is dementia, Brooke, Mason said, his voice regaining its arrogance. It is a delusion of grandeur. Sad. Really, we need to look into power of attorney sooner rather than later. They were writing the narrative. They were building the cage to lock Mags away in a diagnosis so nothing she said would ever be believed. If I walked out there and screamed at them, if I waved this envelope in their faces, they would call me crazy too. They would say I was scavenging in the trash, that I was desperate, that I was harassing a sick old woman. I could not be the daughter. I had to be the prosecutor. I slipped the crumpled envelope into my blazer pocket. I checked my appearance in the reflection of the oven door. I looked calm, cold. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone again. I opened the voice recorder app. I hit the red button. I walked out of the kitchen and back into the dining room. They were all there. Paula was pouring a massive glass of wine. Mason was loosening his tie. Brooke was aggressively typing on her phone, probably deleting the videos she had taken because they didn't get the humiliation reaction they wanted. They froze when they saw me. "Stella," Paula said, letting out a dramatic sigh. "I thought you left. Honestly, after that performance." "I didn't leave," I said. My voice was soft, unsettlingly soft. I walked to the head of the table, the spot where Mags had been sitting. I placed my phone on the table, screen down, the microphone facing them. "I just want to check on Grandma," I said. "She is sleeping," Mason said quickly. "Do not disturb her. She had a rough night." "Right," I said. "A rough night." I looked at Mason, then Brooke, then Paula. I let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. "You know," I began, keeping my tone conversational. "I work with numbers all day, and numbers are funny things. They do not have opinions. They do not have memories. They just exist." "What is your point?" "Stella," Brooke snapped. "We are tired." "My point," I said, leaning forward slightly, "is that 2 million is a very hard number to hallucinate. It is specific. It implies a transaction, a sale, perhaps land." Paula's glass hit the table with a little too much force. Wine sloshed over the rim. "We are not doing this," Paula warned. "I will not let you take advantage of your grandmother's confusion to extort money from us." "Extort." I repeated the word, tasting it. "That is a legal term. Mother, be careful with it." I walked around the table, trailing my hand along the backs of the chairs. "Grandma said she wired the money," I said. "You say she didn't? One of you is lying, and since Grandma Mags has never told a lie in her life, and you three—" I gestured vaguely at the room, at the expensive watch, at the keys to the Range Rover. "You three have a history of creative accounting." "Get out," Mason said. Standing up, he tried to look menacing, but he just looked like a man in a suit he couldn't afford. "Get out of this house, Stella." "I will," I said. "But first, I want you to tell me exactly what happened at the bank. I want to hear the story. If it is just dementia, it should be easy to explain. Right? Who drove her? Who spoke to the teller? Who signed the slip?" The room went dead silent. They exchanged glances. The tells were screaming at me. Brooke looked at Mason. Mason looked at Paula. Paula looked at the hallway where Mags was sleeping. It was the triangle of guilt. They were checking to see who had the best lie ready. "I drove her," Paula said, her chin lifting defiantly. "We went to the credit union last Tuesday. She wanted to withdraw $200 for your gift. That is all that happened. She got confused in the line. She started talking about millions. The teller was very patient. We got the cash, and we left." "So there was no wire transfer initiated?" I asked. "No," Paula said firmly. "And no papers signed?" "No." "And the land in Montana?" "Sold years ago," Mason interjected. "The money is long gone." I nodded slowly. I had what I needed. They were on the record now. They had committed to a version of events that could be empirically disproven. They had locked themselves into the lie. "Okay," I said. "That clarifies things." I picked up my phone. I didn't stop the recording. "I am going to go now," I said. "I am going to drive back to the city, but I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that I gave you a chance to tell the truth." "You are so dramatic," Brooke scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Just go. Stella, take your gas money and go." I smiled. It was genuine this time. "I will," I said. "Thank you for the gas money. It will be very useful for the drive to the district attorney's office on Monday." I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, the silence wasn't just heavy, it was petrified. They didn't know if I was bluffing. They didn't know what I knew. But as I reached for the doorknob, I heard Paula's voice, shrill and panicked, cut through the air. "She is lying. She doesn't know anything." I didn't look back. I stepped out into the crisp, cold Christmas air. My car was parked down the street, away from their shiny leased vehicles. I sat in the driver's seat and exhaled, a long plume of white breath in the dark car. I stopped the recording and saved the file. File name confession attempt 1. I looked at the house one last time. The warm lights were still glowing in the windows, making it look like the perfect American home, but I knew better. It was a fortress of lies, and I had just located the structural weakness. I wasn't going to cry myself to sleep tonight. I was going to work. I started the engine. The radio automatically came on, playing a soft Christmas carol. I turned it off. I needed silence. I needed to think. The envelope in my pocket crinkled as I shifted gears. I patted it, like a talisman. "Hold on, Mags," I whispered to the empty car. "I am coming for them." I pulled away from the curb, leaving the house in Briar Hollow behind. They thought the night was over because the guest had left. They didn't realize the investigation had just begun. I drove toward the highway, not toward my apartment, but toward a 24-hour diner with Wi-Fi. I had research to do on the Hollow Creek Credit Union, and I needed to find out exactly who was working the teller window last Tuesday. The game was afoot, and for the first time in my life, I was the one controlling the board. I lied. I did not drive straight to the diner. In the narrative of my escape, I skipped a beat, a crucial 10-minute window that transformed my suspicion into a dossier. Before I started the engine of my sedan, before I left the driveway of that cursed house in Briar Hollow, I had to secure the primary witness. I had walked out the front door to make them think I was retreating, but I had doubled back through the side garden. I knew the layout of this house better than the architect did. I knew that the latch on the French doors leading to the guest suite was loose because my father had promised to fix it 20 years ago and never did. I slipped inside. The room was dark, smelling of potpourri and anxiety. Grandma Mags was sitting on the edge of the bed. She was not sleeping. She was fully dressed, clutching her purse to her chest like a life preserver. When she saw me step out of the shadows, she did not scream. She let out a long, shuddering breath. "I knew you would come back," she whispered. "I am not leaving you here without a plan," I said, moving to her side and kneeling on the rug. "But we have to be fast. Paula thinks you are sedated. If she comes in and finds me, we lose the element of surprise." Mags nodded. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were clear. The fog of confusion the family tried to project onto her was nowhere to be found. She fumbled with the clasp of her purse. "They took the bag," she said, her voice trembling with frustration. Paula took the big bag with the files, but she didn't check my coat. Mags reached into the inside pocket of her wool cardigan. She pulled out a folded, slightly crumpled piece of paper. It was pink, the customer copy of a wire transfer request. "I kept the receipt," she said fiercely. "I am old, Stella. But I am not stupid. I know how they look at me, like I am a child." I took the paper. I pulled out my phone and used the flashlight function, shielding the glow with my hand so it wouldn't bleed under the doorframe. I scanned the document. It was a standard wire request form from Hollow Creek Credit Union. Date, December 18th. Amount $2 million. Originator Marjorie Dalton. Beneficiary Stella Perry. Beneficiary account number ending in 4429. My heart hammered against my ribs. The account number was correct. That was my savings account. On paper. Right here in pink ink. It looked legitimate. The instruction was clear. "Grandma," I whispered, zooming in with my eyes on the teller's stamp at the bottom. "This looks right. It says it was sent to me. So why did it never arrive?" "I watched the girl type it in," Mags insisted. I stood right there at the counter. "Who was with you?" I asked. This was the most critical question of the night. "Walk me through the physical blocking of the scene. Where were you?" "Where were they?" Mags closed her eyes, replaying the memory. "Paula drove. She waited in the lobby because she said the line gave her a headache. Brooke came up to the counter with me. She said she wanted to help me hold the papers because my arthritis was bad that day." My stomach turned over. "Brooke. Did you fill out this form, Grandma?" I asked, tapping the pink paper. "No," Mag said. "Brooke grabbed a stack of them from the little table. She filled it out for me while we waited. She said, "Let me do the writing. Grandma, you just sign." She read it back to me. $2 million for Stella. I checked it. I signed it. And then we got to the teller. A nice girl, new. Brooke handed her the paper and my ID. The girl typed it in. She gave me this copy. We left. I stared at the paper. If the teller typed in what was on this paper, the money should be in my account. Wires are fast. It had been a week. Unless I looked closer at the paper, the carbon copy was faint. I tilted it under the light. There, in the section for beneficiary address. The handwriting looked slightly different. The pressure of the pen was heavier, as if someone had gone over it or added something at the last second, and there was a tiny, almost imperceptible mark near the account number box, a smudge. Brooke handled the paperwork, I murmured to myself, and Paula created the distraction in the lobby. It was a classic magician's force. One person controls the deck, the other controls the audience. "Stella," Mag said, grabbing my arm. "Did I do it wrong? Did I lose the money?" "No," I said firmly. "You didn't lose anything. It was taken. There is a difference." I took 3 high-resolution photos of the document. I photographed the front, the back, and the specific area where the teller's stamp overlapped with the handwriting. "Listen to me very carefully," I said, putting the phone away and gripping her hands. "This is the most important thing you will do for me. You have to play dead." "What?" "Not literally," I corrected, "but socially, tomorrow morning, when they come in here, I need you to be confused. I need you to be tired. I need you to say, 'Oh, maybe I did imagine it.' Apologize to Paula. Tell Mason you are sorry for causing a scene." Mag stiffened. "I will not apologize to thieves." "You have to," I urged. "If they think you are fighting back, they will lock you down. They will rush the power of attorney paperwork. They will cut off your phone. They will isolate you until you actually do lose your mind. But if they think you are broken, if they think they won tonight, they will get lazy. They will get sloppy. And that is when I will catch them." Mags looked at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, a gleam of understanding entered her eyes. She was a Dalton. She knew how to play the long game. "I will be a ghost," she whispered. "I will be so frail they will forget I am in the room." "Good," I said. "Do not call me. Do not text me. I will handle everything from the outside. Trust me." I kissed her forehead. Her skin felt like dry paper, but underneath, I could feel the pulse of a fighter. "I love you, Stella," she said. "I love you too. Mags, now hide that paper, somewhere Brooke won't look, not in the purse." She nodded and slipped the pink slip into her pillowcase. I moved to the French doors, checked the hallway one last time, still hearing the murmur of Paula's voice complaining about the wine stain on the tablecloth, and slipped out into the night. That was the 10 minutes I didn't tell you about. Now, back in the present timeline, I was in my car, 5 miles away from the house, parked in the shadowed corner of a rest stop off the interstate. The heater was humming, battling the December freeze. It was 9:15 at night on Christmas. Most banks were closed, but the fraud department of a major financial network never sleeps, and while Hollow Creek Credit Union was small, they used a correspondent bank for large wires. I dialed the number for the National Fraud Reporting Hotline, not the customer service line, but the backdoor number I knew from my time at Arkstone Meridian, the one used by risk officers. "Financial Crimes Division. This is Agent Miller," a voice answered after 2 rings. Crisp, professional, no holiday cheer. "This is Stella Perry," I said, my voice shifting into my work persona. "I am calling to report an unauthorized diversion of funds involving a vulnerable adult. I need to open a priority case file." "Go ahead, Ms. Perry." "Are you the account holder?" "I am the intended beneficiary," I said. "The originator is Marjorie Dalton. The originating institution is Hollow Creek Credit Union. The wire amount is $2 million. Date of execution, December 18th. I could hear the clicking of a keyboard on the other end. "I have the tracking number from the originator's receipt," I added. reading the sequence of numbers from the photo I had just taken. "One moment," Agent Miller said. The silence stretched for 30 seconds. "Okay. I see the transaction record in the clearinghouse data. It shows a status of settled." "Settled to where?" I asked. "Because it is not in my account." "Verification questions first," Miller said. He ran me through the standard identity checks. I answered them mechanically. "Okay, Ms. Perry," Miller said, his tone shifting. He sounded confused. "I am looking at the metadata for this wire. It was initiated at 10:14 in the morning on the 18th. "Yes," I said. "That matches the receipt. However," Miller continued, "there is a flag on the routing instruction. It looks like an amendment was filed at 10:16. "An amendment." I sat up straighter. 2 minutes later. "Yes, it appears the originating officer, the teller, entered the wire instructions as per your receipt. But then, 2 minutes later, a correction was entered manually. The beneficiary name was changed from Stella Perry to, let me see here, SP Holdings, LLC. SP Holdings," I repeated, the bile rising in my throat. "Stella Perry Holdings, no. That was too clumsy. Does it list the beneficial owner of the LLC? "I cannot disclose that without a subpoena," Miller said. "But the destination account is not yours. It is a business account at a different regional bank." "The amendment," I pressed, my mind racing. "Who authorized it?" "The system log shows it was authorized by the same teller ID, likely under an error correction protocol. Usually, that happens if a customer says, 'Oh, I gave you the wrong account number.'" Right before the button is pushed, I closed my eyes. I saw the scene perfectly. Mag signs the paper, the teller types it in, then, distraction. Paula drops her keys. Or maybe she comes in from the lobby complaining about the car. And in that moment of confusion, while Mags is looking at Paula, Brooke says to the teller, "Oh, sorry, Grandma forgot. It is actually for her business account. Here is the LLC info." And because Brooke is the granddaughter, and she has been helping the confused old lady with the forms, the teller, the new girl, just fixes it. She amends the name. She changes the destination. "It was a swap," I said into the phone. "They swapped the beneficiary in the 2-minute window between entry and execution. Ms. Perry, if the account holder was present and did not object, the account holder is 82 years old and was being distracted by accomplices," I cut in. "This is elder financial abuse. I am formally requesting a wire recall. I am asserting that the amendment was fraudulent and unauthorized by the account holder." "That is a serious accusation," Miller said. "If we initiate a recall based on fraud, we freeze the funds at the receiving bank. If you are wrong, you could be liable for damages." "I am not wrong," I said. "Freeze it. Flag the receiving account for money laundering review, and flag the teller ID at Hollow Creek for internal audit. I want to know if that teller has a relationship with anyone named Brooke Perry or Mason Perry." There was a pause. "I can flag the transaction for review," Miller conceded, "but a full freeze requires a police report or a signed affidavit from the originator. You will have the affidavit by 9 Monday, I promised. Just put the flag on it. Do not let that money move again. If it hops to an offshore account, it is gone." "Flag is in place," Miller said. "Case number is 4992 Alpha. Anything else?" "One more thing," I said. "The receiving entity, SP Holdings, LLC. Can you at least tell me the state of incorporation?" "Delaware," Miller replied. "Of course it is," I muttered. The black hole of corporate anonymity. I hung up the phone. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. It was worse than I thought. This wasn't just Paula bullying Mags into signing a check. This was a sophisticated, multi-step bank fraud. They had incorporated a shell company with initials that matched mine, SP, so that if anyone glanced at the paperwork quickly, Stella Perry and SP Holdings would look similar enough to pass a casual inspection. They had planned this for weeks, maybe months. "SP Holdings," I said aloud to the empty car. "Sierra, Papa, Mason's middle name was Samuel. Paula's middle name was Patrice. Samuel, Patrice, Spee. It was arrogant. It was sloppy. It was exactly the kind of cleverness a man like Mason would think was brilliant. I put the car in drive. The diner was still 5 miles away, but I wasn't hungry anymore. I was fueled by a cold, hard rage. I had the receipt. I had the confession of the amendment. I knew the mechanism of the crime. Now I just needed to tighten the noose before they realized I had the rope. I merged onto the highway, the red taillights of the cars ahead of me looking like a river of blood. They thought they had erased my future with a 2-minute keystroke correction. They were about to learn that in my line of work, the amendment is where the devil lives, and I was coming to collect him. The notification light on my phone started blinking at 7:15 in the morning. It was an aggressive, pulsating green that seemed to demand attention. I was sitting in the corner booth of the 24-hour diner where I had spent the night, nursing my 4th cup of black coffee and watching the sun bleach the gray sky over the interstate. I picked up the phone. A new group chat had been created. Subject, the Perry family circle. Members Paula, Mason, Brooke, Stella. The first message was from my mother. It was a masterclass in revisionist history. Paula. Good morning, everyone. I hope we can all take a breath today. Last night was very emotional for Grandma, and I think we all let our stress get the better of us. Let's focus on healing. Grandma is confused, but she is safe. Mason agreed. We need to be a united front. No more upsetting her with wild theories. Brooke, love you guys. Stella. Maybe you can come by later for brunch. Grandma was asking for you. Let's just be normal. I stared at the screen. Normal? In their dictionary. Normal meant compliant. It meant silence. They were terrifyingly efficient. In less than 8 hours, they had pivoted from panic to containment. They were circling the wagons, and they wanted me inside the circle where they could watch me, not outside where I could throw stones. I did not reply immediately. In a negotiation, silence is leverage. I let them sweat for 20 minutes. Then, my phone rang. It was Paula. I cleared my throat, pitching my voice to sound tired and contrite. I needed to be the daughter they expected, the one who craved approval more than justice. I slid the green icon to answer. Hello. I sounded small, weak. Stella, Paula said, and her voice was trembling. It was a performance, but a good one. Oh, Stella, I barely slept. I can't believe we fought on Christmas. It breaks my heart. I know, Mom, I said. I am sorry. I was confused. Of course you were, she soothed, latching onto my admission instantly. And Grandma is confused too. The doctor said this stage of dementia is tricky. She mixes up the past and the present. She mixes up wishes with reality. She wished she could give you $2 million. So in her mind, she did. It was a seductive narrative. If I hadn't seen the wire receipt, if I hadn't spoken to the fraud department, I might have believed her. I just want her to be okay, I said. Then come back, Paula urged. Come for brunch. Mason has a friend stopping by, a lawyer, just to help us organize Grandma's care paperwork. We need to make sure she is protected. We need the family together. A lawyer, on the day after Christmas. That wasn't for care paperwork. That was for a power of attorney. They were going to force Mags to sign away her legal agency before the banks opened on Monday. Okay, I said. I will be there in an hour. I hung up. I didn't go to the bathroom to freshen up. I wanted to look haggard. I wanted to look like I had spent the night crying in my car, defeated by the weight of ruining Christmas. I needed them to underestimate me one last time. When I pulled into the driveway in Briar Hollow, the scene was aggressively domestic. Mason was salting the walkway. Brooke was shaking a rug on the porch. It was a tableau of suburban responsibility. I walked inside. The air smelled of bacon and fresh coffee, overlaying the stale scent of last night's tension. Paula rushed at me, enveloping me in a hug that felt more like a frisking than an embrace. There she is, Paula murmured. My girl. She led me into the living room. Mags was sitting in her favorite armchair by the fireplace. She looked smaller than she had last night, They had dressed her in a soft beige tracksuit that made her look institutional. Her hands were folded in her lap. When she saw me, her eyes widened. But she didn't speak. She remembered the plan. Play dead. Sitting on the sofa opposite her was a man I didn't recognize. He was wearing a suit that was too shiny and a watch that was too big. He looked like the kind of lawyer who advertised on the back of a bus. "Stella, this is Brent," Mason said, walking in from the kitchen with a coffee pot. "He is an old friend from college. He is helping us with the estate planning." "Nice to meet you," Brent said, not standing up. He tapped a thick stack of documents on the coffee table. "We are just trying to get everyone on the same page regarding Mrs. Dalton's long-term care." I sat down on the ottoman, positioning myself lower than everyone else. Submissive body language. "What does that mean?" I asked, looking at Mags. "It means Grandma needs help making decisions," Brooke said, perching on the arm of the sofa. "Financial decisions, medical decisions. We need to assign a power of attorney so Mom can handle the bills without dragging Grandma to the bank every week." "Like last week?" I asked innocently. The room froze for a fraction of a second. "Exactly," Paula said quickly. "It was so stressful for her." "We want to avoid that." Brent uncapped a fountain pen. "It is a standard durable power of attorney. It grants Paula Perry and Mason Perry co-signatory rights on all assets. It is just a safety measure." I looked at the document. It wasn't a safety measure. It was a master key. If Mag signed that, they could legally retroactively approve the fraudulent wire transfer. They could claim they moved the money to protect it. I reached into my pocket and turned on the recorder. "Grandma," I said softly, looking at Mags, "do you want to sign this?" Mags looked at Paula, then at Mason. She played the part perfectly. She looked terrified. I don't know. Is it for the best?" "It is for the best, Mother," Paula said firmly. "Just sign it, and we can have breakfast." "I am just confused about one thing," I said, keeping my voice wavering. I turned to look at Brooke. If Grandma is so confused that she needs legal protection, how did she manage to wire money last week, or not wire it? I am still trying to understand the $200 versus the $2 million. "Oh my God. Stella," Brooke groaned. "Drop it. She didn't wire anything. It was a mistake." "But I saw a receipt," I lied. I hadn't shown them the receipt yet. I was fishing. "I saw a pink paper in her bag last night before Mom took it. It looked like a wire receipt." Paula's eyes darted to Mason. Mason's jaw tightened. "You saw a deposit slip," Mason corrected smoothly. "She was depositing her pension check. You are misremembering." "Maybe," I said, scratching my head. "But if she was just depositing a check, why did she tell me she sent $2 million? That is such a specific number. And why did the bank envelope say gas on it?" "She is senile," Brent barked, losing his professional veneer. "Look, the woman doesn't know what day it is. That is why we are here. To stop her from making up stories." "I just want to be sure," I pressed, looking at Brooke. "Because if she did try to send it, and it didn't arrive, then the bank made a mistake. And if the bank made a mistake, we should call them, right? We should call the police and report the missing money." "No." The word exploded out of Brooke's mouth. "Why not?" I asked, widening my eyes. "If there is no money, there is no harm in checking. Unless," I let the word hang there. "Unless," Brooke cracked. She was tired. She was hungover, and she was sick of my stupidity. "There is no point calling the bank." "Stella," Brooke snapped, "because the big transaction was already handled. It is done. It is in the holding company where it belongs." The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bones. Brooke clamped her hand over her mouth. Her eyes went wide. She realized what she had said. "Handled?" I repeated, my voice dropping the waver. "What holding company? Brooke?" She means the estate holding," Mason stammered, stepping in front of his sister. "For the future, for the taxes. So the money does exist," I said. $2 million exists, and you moved it into a holding company, SP Holdings. Perhaps—" Paula's face went white. How do you know that name? Because I do my job, Mother, I said. I investigate fraud. You are a secretary, Paula screamed. You answer phones. I am a senior risk analyst, I corrected calmly. And I know that you amended a wire transfer 2 minutes after it was authorized. I know you changed the beneficiary, and Brooke just admitted it. It doesn't matter, Brent the lawyer sneered, leaning forward. It doesn't matter what you know. She is incompetent. If she signs this paper today, we have control. We can ratify any past transaction, and she is going to sign it. He pushed the paper toward Mags. Sign here, Mrs. Dalton, now. It was a threat. The air in the room was violent. Mason took a step toward the chair, his physical presence looming over Grandma. Sign it, Grandma, Mason said, his voice low and dangerous. Stop the drama. Sign it. Mags looked at the pen, then she looked at me. I nodded. Drop the act. Mags. Mags sat up straight. The slump vanished from her shoulders. The cloudiness vanished from her eyes. She looked at Mason with a gaze so withering he actually took a step back. No, Mags said. What did you say? Paula hissed. I said no. Mags repeated, her voice clear and strong. I will not sign anything, not without my person. We are your people, Paula shouted, throwing her hands up. We are your family. Who else do you have? This ungrateful girl who is trying to send us to jail? She is my granddaughter, Mags said, but she is not my person. Not for this. Mags reached into the pocket of her tracksuit. She pulled out an old flip-style cell phone, not the smartphone Paula monitored. A burner phone. I am only signing legal documents if my advisor is present, Mags said. Advisor. Mason laughed. You mean old man Jenkins who does your taxes. He is dead. Grandma. Not Jenkins, Mags said. She dialed a number. She put it on speaker. The phone rang once, twice, then a voice answered. It was a deep, gravelly voice that sounded like it belonged to a man who wore 3-piece suits and ate nails for breakfast. This is Arthur Henderson, the voice boomed. Brent, the cheap lawyer, actually dropped his pen. His face went slack. Henderson, Brent whispered. Arthur Henderson, the senior partner at Henderson, Klein, and Vane. Hello, Arthur, Mags said pleasantly. It is Marjorie. Marjorie, the man on the phone said, his tone softening with respect. Is it happening? Yes, Mags said. They are all here. They have a paper they want me to sign. They admitted to moving the funds to a holding company. Excellent, Arthur Henderson said. I trust you are safe. I am, Mags said. Stella is here. Good. Put me on with them. Mags held the phone out toward Paula. Paula looked at it like it was a bomb. This is Paula, my mother whispered. Mrs. Perry, Arthur Henderson said. I am the executor of the Marjorie Dalton Trust. I have been managing your mother's assets for 40 years. The land sale in Montana was conducted under my direct supervision, and the instruction to wire the proceeds to Stella Perry was drafted in my office. But she is incompetent, Paula stammered. She doesn't know what she's doing. On the contrary, Henderson's voice cut like a razor. 3 months ago, your mother sat in my office and underwent a full competency evaluation by a forensic psychiatrist. We have it on video. We have the certification. She predicted that once the money was liquidated, you would attempt to intercept it. She predicted you would try to claim she was mentally unfit. The room spun. I looked at Mags. She wasn't just a victim. She was a grandmaster. She had baited the trap months ago. You knew, Mason choked out. I knew you were greedy. Mason, Mags said, her voice sad but firm. I just hoped I was wrong. I hoped you would let the money go. But Mr. Henderson said we had to prepare for the worst. The wire transfer attempt was a test. Mrs. Perry, Henderson continued, we allowed Mrs. Dalton to go to the bank with you to see what you would do. We needed to see if you would actually commit the crime. And according to what I just heard, you did. We can fix it, Brooke squeaked. We can move it back. I am afraid it is too late for that, Henderson said. I am currently filing an emergency injunction, and I am sending a team to the house. They should be pulling into the driveway right about now. As if on cue, the sound of tires crunching on gravel drifted through the window. Not one car, two. I stood up. The act was over. I think that is my cue, I said, looking at the stunned faces of my family. And Brooke, thank you for the confession. The recording is surprisingly clear. I held up my phone. Paula collapsed onto the sofa. Mason looked like he was about to vomit, but Mags just smoothed the fabric of her tracksuit, looked at me, and winked. The social chess match was over. Now, the real war began. The adrenaline crash hit me about an hour after the confrontation in the living room, but I did not have the luxury of resting. The war had moved from the emotional battlefield of my mother's carpeted floor to the cold, hard logistics of forensic accounting. I was sitting in the back of Arthur Henderson's town car, which was parked like a black monolith in the driveway of the Perry estate. Mags had been whisked away by Arthur's private nursing team to a secure location, a hotel suite in the city where my mother could not badger her into submission. I stayed behind, not to reconcile, but to retrieve my laptop from my car and meet with Arthur's lead investigator, a man named Silas. Silas handed me a tablet. On the screen was a dossier that explained 60 years of silence. "The Montana land," Silas said, his voice gravelly. "It was not just a plot of dirt. It was mineral-rich acreage your grandfather bought in the 50s. Mags kept the deed in a safety deposit box that Paula did not know about." I scrolled through the documents. Mags had sold the land 3 weeks ago to a conservation group. The sale price was exactly $2,400,000. After taxes and fees, the net wire amount was just over $2 million. "She told me why she did it," Silas said, looking out the window at the house where my brother and sister were likely shredding documents. "She told me that for 30 years, she watched the family chip away at you. She said she could not stop the emotional cuts, but she could provide the bandage. She wanted you to have 'fuck you money,' Ms. Perry. That was her exact term." I felt a lump in my throat. Fuck you money. It was the most beautiful gift anyone had ever given me. It wasn't just cash. It was autonomy. It was the ability to walk away from Briar Hollow and never look back. But they had stolen my exit. "Let's look at the mechanism," I said, pushing the emotion aside. "I flagged the wire with the National Fraud Database last night. What do we have from the bank?" "Hollow Creek Credit Union is cooperating," Silas said. "Once Henderson threatened them with a negligence lawsuit for allowing an elder to be coerced. They opened the digital vault. Look at this." He tapped the screen. A call log appeared. On the morning of the wire transfer, at 10:15, a call was received by the credit union's verification line. For a wire of that size, the bank is required to call the customer on file to confirm the details. "They called Mags's home number," I noted. "No," Silas corrected. "They called the number listed on the updated profile. A profile update was submitted 5 minutes before the wire. The phone number on file was changed to this." He pointed to a 10-digit number. I didn't need to look it up. I knew that number. I had ignored calls from it 1,000 times. "That is Brooke's cell phone," I said. "She changed the contact info so the verification call would go to her, not Mags." "Exactly," Silas said. "The audio recording of the call exists. The bank officer asks, 'Mrs. Dalton, did you authorize a change of beneficiary to SP Holdings?' And a female voice, sounding very young for an 80-year-old, says, 'Yes, that is my holding company. Please push it through.' She impersonated the account holder," I said. "That is wire fraud. That is identity theft. That is a federal crime." "It gets worse," Silas said. "Or better, depending on how much you want to see them in handcuffs. Look at the flow of funds." I switched tabs to the transaction history. The money had hit the account of SP Holdings LLC on the 18th, but it didn't stay there. It was like watching a drop of mercury hit the floor. It shattered into a dozen smaller pieces. "Structuring," I whispered. "They are smurfing it." In the world of money laundering, structuring is the act of breaking a large sum of money into smaller transactions to avoid triggering the federal reporting threshold, which is $10,000, on the screen, I saw a cascade of transfers leaving SP Holdings, $9,500 to an account ending in 8821, $9,800 to an account ending in 9904, $9,000 to a consulting firm registered to Mason Perry. Mason's real estate investment, I realized. He told everyone he closed a deal last week. He didn't close a deal, he just paid himself with Grandma's money. And look at the dates, Silas added. Brooke paid off her car loan on the 19th, a lump sum payment of $42,000. The source of funds was a dividend from SP Holdings. It was sloppy. It was incredibly, arrogantly sloppy. They assumed no one would ever look. They assumed Mags would die or be declared incompetent before anyone audited the books. They treated a federal banking system like it was a family piggy bank. We have them, I said. We have the trace. We have the phone record. We have one problem, Silas said. They are launching a counteroffensive, and they are aiming it at your livelihood. My phone buzzed. It was an automated alert from my company's HR portal. New document added to your personnel file. What did they do? I asked, opening my email. Paula called your company's ethics hotline an hour ago, Silas said. She claimed she was a concerned family member. She reported that you are suffering from a severe manic episode, that you are financially unstable, and that you have been harassing your elderly grandmother for money. She offered to send them a video of you screaming at dinner last night. I felt the blood drain from my face. Arkstone Meridian Group deals with sensitive financial data. If an analyst is flagged as mentally unstable or financially desperate, their security clearance is suspended immediately. It is an automatic protocol. Paula knew this. She didn't know what I did exactly, but she knew that in the corporate world, the reputation of instability is a career death sentence. She was trying to get me fired so I would lose the resources to fight them. She wanted to break me financially so I would have to come crawling back to the family for support. Drive, I told the chauffeur. Take me to the office, now. It is Sunday, Silas noted. I have a key card, I said. And the head of human resources comes in on Sundays to catch up on paperwork. I am not letting Paula control the narrative. The drive to the city took 45 minutes. I spent the entire time drafting a formal affidavit on my laptop. I attached the photos of the wire receipt, the call logs Silas had given me, and the recording of Brooke's confession from the living room. When I walked into the glass lobby of Arkstone Meridian, I didn't look like a victim. I looked like an analyst on a warpath. I swiped my badge. The light turned green. Thank God. They hadn't locked me out yet. I went straight to the 24th floor. The lights were dimmed, but I saw the lamp on in the corner office. David, the VP of Human Resources, was there. He looked up, surprised, as I knocked on the glass door. Stella, he said, taking off his reading glasses. I just got a very disturbing voicemail regarding you. I was going to call you in the morning. I know, I said, walking in and placing my laptop on his desk. Paula Perry, my mother, she claims I am having a breakdown. She claims you are extorting your grandmother, David said, his face serious. Stella, you know I have to take this seriously. We handle client risk. If you are compromised. I am not compromised, I said. I am the whistleblower. I turned the laptop around. This is not a family dispute. David, this is an active financial crimes investigation. My mother and siblings are currently the subjects of a fraud inquiry involving $2 million. They are attempting to discredit me because I uncovered the theft. David looked at the screen. I played the audio of Brooke saying, "The big transaction was already handled. It is in the holding company." I showed him the structuring pattern of the bank transfers. I am filing a preemptive disclosure, I said, using the company's own terminology. I am reporting that I am being targeted by bad actors attempting to manipulate my employment status to obstruct an investigation. Under the company's protection policy, I am requesting legal support. David listened. He watched the numbers. He was a numbers guy, just like me. He saw the structuring. He saw the LLC shell game. Holy hell, David muttered. Your family did this. Yes, I said. And if they are willing to defraud a federally insured credit union, lying to an HR hotline is nothing to them. David picked up his phone. I am flagging the complaint from your mother as malicious harassment. Your clearance stays. And Stella. Yes. Do you need corporate legal to draft a cease and desist? No, I said. I have Arthur Henderson, but thank you. I walked out of the office feeling lighter. They had fired their biggest gun my career, and it had jammed. But the final piece of the puzzle fell into place when I got back to the car. Silas was waiting with a laptop open. We got the visual, Silas said. Henderson got the preservation order for the CCTV footage from the credit union lobby. You need to see this. He pressed play. The grainy black and white footage showed the lobby of Hollow Creek Credit Union. I saw Mags, looking small and confused. I saw Paula, pacing near the door, talking on her phone, likely the distraction. I saw Brooke guiding Mags to the counter, but then I saw the teller. In my mind, I had imagined a stranger, a random employee who made a mistake or was charmed by Brooke. But as the camera zoomed in on the teller station, I recognized the profile, the blonde hair, the specific way she leaned over the counter, the familiarity with which she touched Brooke's arm. Pause, I said. Silas froze the frame. I know her, I said, my voice cold. Who is she? Her name is Chloe Vance, I said. She was Brooke's maid of honor at her first wedding. They went to sorority together. She doesn't just work at the bank. She is Brooke's best friend. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't just a crime of opportunity where Brooke saw a wire form and got greedy. This was a conspiracy. Brooke had chosen that specific branch because Chloe was working. Chloe had likely been the one to signal them when the new system allowed for easy amendments. Chloe was the one who accepted the phone verification knowing full well she was talking to Brooke, not Mags. It is an inside job, Silas said. That moves this from fraud to racketeering. We are looking at a RICO predicate if we push hard enough. Chloe Vance, I said, staring at the screen. She has a mortgage. She has 2 kids. She has everything to lose. What do you want to do? Silas asked. I looked at the image of my sister and her friend laughing while my grandmother signed away her life savings in the foreground. Brooke thinks she is protected because she is family, I said. She thinks I won't send her to jail. But Chloe is just a friend, and friends flip when they see the indictment coming. I closed the laptop. We are not going to arrest Brooke, I said. Not yet. We are going to break Chloe. If we get the teller to confess that she knowingly processed a fraudulent amendment at Brooke's instruction, the whole house of cards falls down. I will have the legal team draft a subpoena for Ms. Vance, Silas said. No, I said. A subpoena gives her time to lawyer up. I want to catch her while she still thinks she got away with it. I looked at the time. It was late afternoon. Take me to the bank, I said. I know she is not working today, but I know where she lives, and I think it is time for a courtesy visit from the risk management department. My family had tried to use my job to destroy me. Now, I was going to use my job to destroy their alibi. They had made one fatal mistake. They involved an outsider. And outsiders do not have the same blood loyalty that keeps secrets buried. Chloe Vance was the loose thread, and I was about to pull it. Monday morning broke over the city with a gray, steely determination that matched my mood perfectly. While my family was likely scrambling to find a compliant doctor to declare my grandmother incompetent, I was sitting in the corner office of Talia Green. Talia was not a warm woman. She did not have family photos on her desk. She had a view of the skyline and a reputation for dissecting financial predators with the precision of a surgeon. She was the kind of lawyer you hired when you didn't just want to win a case. You wanted to scorch the earth so nothing would ever grow there again. Let's review the board, Talia said, sliding a tablet across the polished obsidian desk. We have the wire receipt. We have the admission of the amendment. We have the structuring of funds. And thanks to your preemptive strike with HR yesterday, we have evidence of retaliation. You have given me a lot of ammunition. Stella, is it enough to stop them? I asked. It is enough to start the bleeding, Talia corrected. But if we want to kill the beast, we need to cut off the head. She pressed a button on her intercom. File the ex parte motion for the emergency protective order, allegations of elder abuse, financial exploitation, and conspiracy to commit fraud. I want a temporary restraining order barring Paula Perry, Mason Perry, and Brooke Perry from contacting Marjorie Dalton or accessing any assets in her name, and attach the affidavit from Arthur Henderson regarding the competency evaluation. Done, her paralegal's voice crackled back. Now, Talia said, turning back to me. We subpoena the communications. The legal machinery moved faster than I expected. Because we had credible evidence of a felony the wire fraud, Talia was able to convince a judge to expedite the discovery process. We weren't just asking for bank records. We were asking for the digital footprints of the conspiracy. By Wednesday afternoon, we had the logs. I sat in a conference room surrounded by boxes of printed text messages and email chains. It is a strange thing to read the transcript of your own family plotting against you. It creates a dissonance in your brain, a gap between the people you remember eating birthday cake with and the people on the page. I picked up a stack of logs from a group chat titled Project Montana. December 10th. Mason. Grandma is meeting with Henderson again. We need to move fast. If she liquidates the land, the cash is loose. December 10th. Paula. I will handle Mother. She trusts me. We just need to make sure Stella is not in the ear. December 12th. Brooke. I talked to Chloe at the credit union. She says she can flag the account if a big wire comes in. She can put a hold on it for verification, which gives us a window. December 12th. Mason. Good. If the money moves, it moves to us. We need to set up the LLC. I will file the papers for SP Holdings tomorrow. I felt a cold chill. They hadn't just reacted to a senile old woman's whim. They had pre-planned the interception. They had built the trap before Mags even walked into the bank. But the text that broke me, the one that made me put the paper down and stare at the wall for a full minute, was dated December 24th, Christmas Eve. Paula. She is insisting on giving Stella the money tomorrow. She thinks the wire went through. Brooke. Let her give the envelope. It will be funny. Mason. What is in it? Paula. $200. I switched the cash. Let's make her open it before dinner. I want to see her face when she thinks she is rich and realizes she is just Stella. Brooke. LOL. Give her $200 only. Watch her perform. I will set up the camera. Cold open. Watch her perform. They didn't just want the money. They wanted the show. They wanted to consume my humiliation as entertainment. The $200 wasn't a gift. It was a prop in a comedy sketch where I was the only one who didn't know the lines. You okay? Talia asked, stepping into the room. I am fine, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. I just found the intent. This proves malice. It proves more than that, Talia said, looking at the log. It proves premeditated emotional infliction of distress. We can add that to the civil suit, but I have better news. The bank folded. My head snapped up. Chloe. The internal audit department at the credit union didn't like the look of that 2-minute amendment, Talia said, sitting on the edge of the table. Especially after we sent them the draft of the RICO complaint, naming the institution as a co-conspirator. They brought Ms. Vance in for questioning this morning. Did she talk? She sang, Talia said. Apparently, the prospect of federal prison does not appeal to a suburban mother of two. She admitted that Brooke Perry provided her with the account details for SP Holdings 2 days prior to the transaction. She admitted that she deliberately bypassed the secondary authorization protocol because Brooke told her it was a surprise for the family trust. She claims she didn't know it was theft. She thought she was helping with estate planning. She is lying, I said. She knew. Of course she knew, Talia agreed. But her confession gives us the link. It ties Brooke directly to the manipulation of the banking instrument. The credit union has suspended her. And they have frozen the funds in the receiving account at the correspondent bank. The money is locked. Stella, they can't spend another dime." The noose was tightening, and they felt it. That evening, my phone rang. It was Paula. I looked at Talia. She nodded. "Answer it. Speaker. Do not agree to anything. Just listen." I picked up the phone. "Stella?" Paula's voice was unrecognizable. The imperious matriarch was gone. In her place was a whimpering, terrified woman. "Stella, please, you have to stop this." "Stop what, Mother?" I asked calmly. "The lawyers, the police, the bank called Mason. They froze his accounts. They froze everything. He can't pay his mortgage. He has a baby on the way." "Stella." Mason did not have a baby on the way, but Paula never let facts get in the way of a guilt trip. "I didn't freeze his accounts," I said. "The federal government did. That tends to happen when you launder stolen money." "It wasn't stolen," Paula cried. "It was family money. We were just managing it. For Grandma. And for you. We were going to give you your share eventually." "My share?" I asked. "You mean the $200? "That was a joke," she sobbed. "A bad joke. Look, we can fix this. We can settle this tonight. Come over. We will write you a check. $50,000. Right now. Just tell the lawyers it was a misunderstanding." 50,000. They stole 2 million. And they were offering me 2.5% to keep my mouth shut. It was insulting. But I needed them to commit to the bribe in writing. "I don't know, Mom," I said. Pitching my voice to sound wavering, I let a little tremble enter my tone. "I am scared. The lawyers are very aggressive. I don't know if I can stop them." "You can," Paula insisted, sensing weakness. "You are the plaintiff. If you drop the suit, it goes away. 50,000. Stella, cash. Think of what you could do with that." "I need to think," I stammered. "Can you send me the offer so I can look at it? I can't think straight right now." "Yes," Paula said immediately. "I will text it to you. Just promise me you will drop it." "Send the text," I said. "Then I will decide." I hung up. 2 minutes later, the message arrived. "Paula, if you withdraw the complaint and sign the NDA, we will transfer $50,000 to you immediately from the SP Holdings account. We just want peace." Talia read the text and smiled. It was a shark's smile. "They just admitted control of the SP Holdings account," Talia said. "And they offered a settlement paid from the proceeds of the crime. That is admissibility of guilt. They just nailed their own coffins." "What now?" I asked. "Now," Talia said. "We go see the general." We drove to the secure hotel where Mags was staying. It was a suite in a high-end complex used by diplomats and high-profile witnesses. Mags was sitting by the window, watching the city lights. She looked rested. The haunted look she had worn at Christmas was gone. "They are panicking," I told her. Sitting opposite her, "They offered me $50,000 to walk away." Mags laughed. It was a dry, raspy sound. "They always did think cheap. They think everyone has a price tag that ends in 0. We have the evidence to destroy them." "Grandma," I said. "Talia says we can pursue criminal charges. We can send them to prison." Mags looked at me. Her eyes were sad. "They are my children, Stella, and my grandchildren. I know they are rotten. I know they are thieves. But do I want to spend my last years visiting them in a penitentiary?" I felt a surge of disappointment. "You want to let them go?" "No," Mag said sharply. "I didn't say that. Prison is too easy for them. In prison, they get fed. They get a bed. They get to be victims. I want something worse for them." She reached into the side pocket of her bag, the one Paula hadn't checked. She pulled out a thick cream-colored envelope. It was sealed with wax. "You found the first envelope," Mag said. "The one with the money. But you didn't know about the second one." "What is this?" I asked. "This," Mag said, tapping the envelope against her knee, "is the Dalton Family Trust, the original version, the one my husband wrote 50 years ago." She handed it to me. I broke the seal. The document inside was heavy. I scanned the first page. It was a standard trust agreement. outlining the distribution of assets upon Marjorie Dalton's death. The primary beneficiaries were listed as Paula Perry, Mason Perry, and Brooke Perry. "I don't understand," I said. "This gives them everything." "Keep reading," Mag said. "Look at the amendment clause on the last page. The one I had Arthur Henderson add 3 years ago, the day after you visited me and told me about your promotion." I flipped to the back. There, in crisp legal language, was a clause titled The Integrity Stipulation. In the event that any primary beneficiary attempts to legally incapacitate the grantor or is found to have misappropriated assets prior to the grantor's death, or attempts to interfere with the distribution of specific gifts to other beneficiaries, the entirety of the trust shall be immediately dissolved and reconstituted. I looked up. "Reconstituted how?" "Read the next line," Mags whispered. "Upon activation of this clause, all assets previously designated for Paula Perry, Mason Perry, and Brooke Perry shall be transferred to the sole remaining beneficiary who has not violated the stipulation, Stella Perry. Furthermore, the violating parties shall be explicitly disinherited from all future distributions, real estate holdings, and liquid assets." My hands shook. "This isn't just about the $2 million, I realized. This is everything. The house in Briar Hollow, the investment portfolio, the antique collection, the remaining land. Everything," Mags confirmed. "The house they are sleeping in right now. It is in the trust. If they had just let you have the money, they would have kept the rest. They would have inherited millions when I died, but because they got greedy because they tried to steal your piece." "They lost the whole pie," Talia finished, her eyes widening in admiration. "Mrs. Dalton, this is brilliant. It is a poison pill defense." "I told Arthur to hold it," Mag said. "I told him it only becomes active if they cross the line. Tonight, when they offered you money to silence you, they cross the line?" "They sprinted across it," I said. "Then activate it," Mag said. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the matriarch who had raised a family, buried a husband, and survived decades of betrayal. "Sign the affidavit. Stella, trigger the clause. I am not sending them to jail. I am sending them to the street. I am evicting them from the life they think they deserve." I looked at the document. It was more powerful than a subpoena. It was an eviction notice for their entire existence. "If I sign this," I said, "they lose the house, they lose the safety net. Mason loses his consulting backing. Brooke loses her lifestyle." "They chose this," Mag said. "They ate the future. Now they can starve." I took the pen from Talia. I didn't hesitate. I didn't think about the Christmas dinners or the fake smiles. I thought about the gas tape on the envelope. I thought about the text message, "Watch her perform." I signed my name. "It is done," Talia said, taking the document. "I will file this with the probate court tomorrow morning, and then I will serve them with the notice to vacate." The legal thriller was over. The horror story was about to begin for them. They thought they were fighting for $2 million. They didn't realize they had just gambled their entire inheritance on a bluff, and I was holding a royal flush. "What do we do now?" I asked Mags. "Now," Mags smiled, leaning back in her chair. "Now we wait for the screams." The war for the narrative began at 6 o'clock on Tuesday morning. My mother, realizing that she had lost control of the legal battlefield, decided to scorch the earth of my reputation. She did not use lawyers for this. She used Facebook. She used the family group chats. She used the grapevine of Briar Hollow, which was faster than fiber optic cable and twice as toxic. I sat in my apartment, watching the notifications roll in. Paula had posted a long, emotional diatribe. She claimed that I was suffering from a severe mental health crisis. She alleged that I had come to Christmas dinner demanding money from our beloved, confused grandmother, and that when the family refused to enable my gambling addiction, a nice creative touch, she added, I had threatened to sue them. She posted an old photo of me looking tired and disheveled from college finals week, captioned, "Please pray for Stella. We are trying to get her the help she needs, but she is lashing out at the people who love her most." It was a masterclass in Darvo, deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. My phone blew up with texts from cousins I hadn't seen in a decade. Stella, is this true? Do you need a place to stay? How could you do that to Mags? I did not reply. I did not comment. I did not post a defensive status update. In the court of public opinion, the person who screams the loudest usually looks the guiltiest. I wasn't interested in winning likes. I was interested in winning the war. I opened my laptop. I had spent the night compiling a document with Silas and Talia. We called it The Truth Ledger. It wasn't an emotional rant. It was a PDF containing the wire receipt, the gas envelope photo, the bank's amendment log, and the transcript of Brooke's confession. I did not send it to the gossip mongers. I sent it to the gatekeepers. I emailed Uncle Vance, my grandfather's brother, who controlled the invitations to the annual family reunion and held the moral high ground in the clan. I emailed the board of deacons at Paula's church. I emailed the compliance officer at the real estate licensing board where Mason held his credentials. I added a simple subject line, documentation regarding the financial exploitation of Marjorie Dalton. Then I waited. The silence that followed was heavy. For 3 hours. Paula continued her posting spree. Then, at noon, the tide turned. I was added to a conference call by Uncle Vance. I muted my microphone and listened. Paula was already on the line, sobbing performatively. "She is ruining us. Uncle Vance," Paula wailed. "She is making up these horrible lies because she is jealous of Brooke and Mason. You know how Stella is. She has always been difficult." "Stop talking, Paula," Uncle Vance said. His voice was not loud. It was granite. "But I said stop," Vance commanded. "I am looking at a document from the credit union. I am looking at a time-stamped log showing a beneficiary change to an LLC registered to you and your children. Did you authorize this?" "It was for Mags," Paula insisted, "to protect her assets. By moving them into a shell company Mags doesn't control." Vance asked. "That is not protection. Paula, that is embezzlement. Do not call this family drama. Calling this drama is covering up a crime, and I will not have the Dalton name dragged through criminal court because you wanted a new kitchen." "It is not like that," Paula shrieked. "It is exactly like that," Vance said. "I am removing you from the reunion committee effective immediately. And Paula, if you post one more word about Stella, I will personally fund her legal team." The line went dead. I smiled and took a sip of my coffee. The social shield had been shattered. Now came the financial suffocation. Mason was the first to feel the air leave the room. According to Silas, Mason had placed a non-refundable deposit on a triplex in the city, planning to use the laundered funds to close the deal on Thursday. He had already bragged about it on LinkedIn. I wasn't there to see it. But Silas had a contact at the escrow company. The report I got was delicious. Mason had walked into the closing meeting wearing his Patek Philippe watch, looking like the master of the universe. When the escrow officer asked for the proof of funds for the remaining balance, Mason had handed over a statement from SP Holdings. The officer had looked at the computer, frowned, and typed something. "Mr. Perry," the officer had said, "this account is flagged." "Flagged?" Mason asked, sweating. "That is a mistake. I transferred $50,000 into it yesterday." "The entire account is frozen by federal order," the officer said. "Code red, suspected illicit origin. We can't accept funds from this entity. Do you have another source?" Mason didn't have another source. He had maxed out credit cards and a leased BMW. The deal collapsed. The sellers kept his deposit. Mason was escorted out of the building, but the weak link, as always, was Brooke. Brooke was not built for pressure. She was built for brunch, with the credit union investigation heating up and her best friend Chloe Vance facing federal charges. Brooke began to spiral. She called me at 4 in the afternoon. I let it go to voicemail. She called again, and again. Finally, I answered. "What?" I said, sounding exhausted. "You have to tell them to stop," Brooke hissed. She sounded like she was hiding in a closet. "The FBI was at Chloe's house. Stella. They took her laptop. Her husband is threatening divorce. That sounds stressful, I said. Maybe Chloe shouldn't have committed wire fraud. She didn't mean to, Brooke cried. I just asked her to fix the paperwork. I told her Grandma got the name wrong and we needed to correct it for tax purposes. I didn't tell her to steal anything. There it was, the admission. You asked her to change the beneficiary. I asked, signaling Silas, who was listening on the other line. You specifically directed her to change it to SP Holdings. Yes, but only because Mom said we had to, Brooke shouted. Mom said if the money went to you, you would waste it. We were going to invest it, I was just the messenger. Stella, why am I the one getting heat? Mom is the one who incorporated the LLC. Brooke, I said, softening my voice. I believe you. You do. Yes, I lied. I know Mom manipulates everyone. She manipulated Mags. She manipulated you, and now she is letting you take the fall for Chloe. Exactly, Brooke said, crying now. It is so unfair. Listen, I said. I am tired of this. Brooke, the lawyers are costing me a fortune. I just want it to be over. Mom sent me a text about a settlement. $50,000. Take it, Brooke urged. Please, Stella, just take it and sign the NDA so the bank unfreezes the account. Once the account is open, we can pay you, and this all goes away. I can't sign an NDA without seeing the money, I said, but the account is frozen. We have cash, Brooke said quickly. Mom has a safe in the house. We can give you $10,000 now as a good faith payment, and the rest when the freeze lifts. Just come sign the papers. Please, I can't go to jail. Stella, I can't look good in orange. I looked at Silas. He held up a hand, signaling me to pause. He scribbled something on a notepad. Lure her out. Neutral ground. Get the signature on the bribe attempt. I am not coming to the house, I said. I don't feel safe there. Fine, Brooke said. Where then? There is a coffee shop off the highway, I said. The one near the old cinema. Meet me there in an hour. Bring the settlement agreement. If the terms are right, I will sign it and call off the dogs. Okay, Brooke breathed. Okay, I will be there. Just me, no Mom, no Mason. Just you. I agreed. I hung up. She is coming, I told Silas. She thinks she is buying my silence. She is buying her indictment, Silas said, standing up and adjusting his jacket. We have the confession on tape. Now we need the overt act. If she presents you with a settlement agreement that explicitly mentions the illicit funds, she is documenting the conspiracy. Who is coming with us? I asked. Me, Silas said, and 2 agents from the Treasury Department who are very interested in why a small-town LLC is structuring payments like a cartel. The coffee shop was quiet. It was one of those generic places with industrial lighting and indie music that sounded like despair. I sat at a table in the back, nursing a tea I didn't drink. Brooke arrived 12 minutes late. She was wearing huge sunglasses and a trench coat, looking like a bad caricature of a spy. She scanned the room nervously. When she saw I was alone, her shoulders dropped. She marched over and sat down, slapping a manila envelope onto the table. Thank God, she said, pulling down her glasses. Her eyes were red-rimmed. You look terrible. Stella. Thanks, I said. It has been a long week. Here, Brooke said, pushing the envelope toward me. Mom typed it up. It says you accept $50,000 in exchange for withdrawing all complaints and acknowledging that the wire transfer was a family misunderstanding. I opened the envelope. I read the document. It was legally amateurish, but factually damning. It explicitly stated Stella Perry agrees to cease all claims regarding the $2 million deposited into SP Holdings. And the money, I asked. I brought $5,000 cash, Brooke whispered, tapping her purse. It is all I could get from the safe. The rest comes later. Just sign it. Stella, stop being a bitch and sign it. I looked at my sister. Even now, begging for her life. She couldn't help but be cruel. She was so convinced of her own superiority that she couldn't see the cliff edge she was standing on. You know, Brooke, I said, picking up a pen. I always wondered why you went along with this. You have your own design business. You didn't need the money. I have debt. Okay, she snapped. Keeping up appearances is expensive, and Mom said it was easy. She said you wouldn't fight. She said you were conditioned to take whatever scraps we gave you. Conditioned, like a dog. She was wrong, I said. I didn't sign the paper. I closed the envelope and slid it to my side of the table. What are you doing? Brooke asked, her voice rising. Sign it? No, I said. I am keeping this. It is evidence. You lied to me, Brooke screeched. She stood up, attracting the attention of the barista. You said you wanted to settle. I lied, I said, standing up too. I learned from the best. I am leaving, Brooke spat. And you are getting nothing. We will fight you forever. You can't fight, I said calmly. You have no ammunition left. Brooke grabbed her purse and stormed toward the exit. I followed her, keeping a safe distance. She pushed through the glass doors and marched into the parking lot. The sun was setting, casting long, bruised shadows across the asphalt. You are dead to us. Stella, she yelled over her shoulder, fumbling for her keys. Do not expect an invite to anything. You are out of the family. She reached her car. She pressed the unlock button on her key fob. That was when the headlights turned on. Not her headlights. Two black SUVs that had been parked in the adjacent spots suddenly flared to life, illuminating Brooke in a blinding crossbeam of white LED light. She froze, shielding her eyes. What the? The doors of the SUVs opened. 4 men stepped out. 2 were wearing windbreakers with gold lettering. 2 were in suits. One of the men in suits walked forward. It was Silas. Beside him was a woman I didn't know, holding a badge. Brooke Perry, the woman asked. Who are you? Brooke stammered, backing up against her car door. Am I being mugged? I am Special Agent Rossi with the Treasury Department, the woman said, and this is Mr. Silas from the private investigation firm retained by the Marjorie Dalton Trust. We would like to have a word with you regarding your conversation with Chloe Vance and the subsequent structuring of funds through SP Holdings. I didn't. Brooke looked around wildly. She saw me standing on the sidewalk, holding the envelope she had just given me. Stella, she pleaded. Stella, tell them we settled. I walked forward until I was just outside the circle of light. We didn't settle. Brooke, I said. I just collected the receipt. Silas held out his hand. The envelope, Ms. Perry. I handed him the settlement agreement. Thank you, Silas said. He turned to Brooke. Ms. Perry, we are not arresting you right this second, but we are serving you with a federal notice to freeze all assets, including the vehicle you are currently leaning against, as it was paid off with disputed funds. I suggest you call a lawyer, a real one, not your brother's friend. Brooke slid down the side of her car, collapsing onto the asphalt. She wasn't the social butterfly anymore. She was just a girl who had followed her mother off a cliff. This isn't fair, she sobbed. No, I said, turning to walk away to my own car. It is justice, and in this family, that is something you have never seen before. I didn't look back at her. I had one more stop to make. The king and queen were still in the castle, and I had the eviction notice in my glove compartment. The conference room on the 42nd floor of Talia Green's law firm was designed to intimidate. The walls were glass, offering a panoramic view of the city that made the people inside feel like they were suspended in the sky. But the air inside the room was heavy, smelling of stale coffee and desperation. On one side of the mahogany table sat the Perry faction. My mother, Paula, was wearing a black dress that suggested mourning, though I wasn't sure if she was mourning her reputation or her bank account. Mason sat next to her, looking hollow. The arrogance that usually fit him like a tailored suit had evaporated, leaving behind a sweaty, twitchy man who kept checking his phone. Brooke was there too, huddled in a corner chair, wearing dark glasses indoors. She hadn't spoken a word since she walked in. On the other side sat me, Talia, and Silas. We were silent. We had the luxury of silence. Paula's lawyer, a man named Mr. Sterling, who looked like he regretted taking this case every time he glanced at Talia, cleared his throat. We are here to propose a global settlement, Sterling said, sliding a thin folder across the table. My clients acknowledge that mistakes were made in the handling of Mrs. Dalton's finances. However, they maintain that their intent was benevolent. They sought to protect the assets from tax liability. Benevolent embezzlement, Talia said dryly, not touching the folder. That is a new legal theory. Go on. To avoid a protracted legal battle that would only hurt the family name, Sterling continued, sweating slightly. We are prepared to offer Ms. Stella Perry a restitution payment of $300,000. I laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was a sharp, involuntary sound that bounced off the glass walls. 300,000, I repeated. Out of 2 million? The remainder of the funds, Mason piped up, his voice cracking, has been absorbed. We had expenses, setting up the LLC, legal fees, consultations. And frankly, we consider the rest a management fee for the years of care we provided to Grandma. I looked at him. You charged Grandma a $1,700,000 management fee for the privilege of being gaslit by you. It is a fair offer, Stella, Paula said, leaning forward. Her eyes were pleading, but her jaw was set in that familiar, stubborn line. 300,000 is a lot of money. You could buy a condo. You could pay off your student loans. All we ask is that you sign a non-disclosure agreement and withdraw your cooperation with the federal investigation. And the timeline, I asked. When do I get this money? As soon as you sign, Paula said quickly. Once the NDA is signed, we can show it to the bank. They will unfreeze the accounts, and we will wire you the money immediately. I looked at Talia. She was tapping her pen against her legal pad, a rhythmic, predatory sound. Let me get this straight, I said, leaning over the table. You want me to lie to the federal government, obstruct an active Treasury Department investigation, and sign away my right to speak, all so you can unfreeze the money you stole from my grandmother, and then give me 15% of it back. We are family. Stella, Paula hissed. Doesn't that mean anything to you? We made a mistake, but you are trying to burn the house down. I am not burning the house down, I said. I am just pointing out that it is already on fire. I stood up. The answer is no. You want to buy my silence with money you stole? That is not a settlement. That is an insult. You are being unreasonable, Mason shouted, slamming his hand on the table. You think you can just take everything we have rights. We are the primary beneficiaries of the trust. Actually, a voice came from the doorway behind me. That is a matter of opinion. The room went dead silent. The door opened. Silas stepped aside, and my grandmother, Marjorie Dalton, walked in. She was not wearing a tracksuit today. She was wearing a navy blue suit that I hadn't seen in years. Her hair was done. She was walking with a cane, but she wasn't leaning on it. She was using it like a scepter. Mother? Paula gasped, half rising from her chair. What are you doing here? You should be resting. You are not well. Sit down. Paula, Mag said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of 80 years of authority. Paula sat. Mags walked to the head of the table. She didn't look at Paula. She didn't look at Mason or Brooke. She looked at me. I heard the offer, Mag said. $300,000. You value my life's work at a discount. Grandma, please, Brooke whimpered from the corner. We didn't mean to hurt you. We just... Be quiet, Brooke, Mag said, without turning her head. I am done listening to lies. Today, I am here to clarify something. You keep using that word, family. You use it like a shield. You use it to excuse the way you treat people. She placed her hands on the table. Family is not about whose blood runs in your veins. Mag said, It is about who stands by you when you are bleeding. For 30 years, I watched you treat Stella like she was a mistake. I watched you mock her. I watched you exclude her. And I did nothing because I wanted to keep the peace. She took a deep breath. I was wrong. There is no peace with wolves. From today on, I decide who is family. This is ridiculous, Mason scoffed, though he looked terrified. She is clearly being manipulated by Stella's lawyers. This is undue influence. Is it? Talia asked. She opened her laptop and connected it to the large screen on the wall. Let's talk about influence. Specifically, the influence you exerted on the banking system. The screen flickered to life. Exhibit A, Talia said. CCTV footage from the Hollow Creek Credit Union. The video played. It showed the lobby scene Paula pacing, Brooke guiding Mags. Then it switched to a side angle. It showed Brooke sliding a piece of paper to the teller while Mags was looking away. It showed the teller nodding and typing. Exhibit B, Talia continued. The text logs. The conversation from Christmas Eve appeared on the screen, magnified. Paula, $200. I switched the cash. I want to see her face when she thinks she is rich and realizes she is just Stella. A gasp went through the room. Paula went pale. She hadn't known we had the texts. She stared at her own words, projected 10 feet tall. And finally, Talia said, Exhibit C, the testimony of Chloe Vance. Talia played a voice recording. It was clear. High-quality audio taken from the federal interrogation room. Agent, who directed you to amend the wire transfer? Chloe Brooke. She said her mother, Paula, had set up the LLC. She said Mason was waiting for the funds to clear for a real estate deal. They told me it was a tax strategy. They told me the grandmother wouldn't notice. The recording ended. The silence in the room was absolute. That is conspiracy, Talia said. That is wire fraud. That is elder abuse. And Mason. Since you received funds into your personal consulting account, that is money laundering. Paula stood up. She was shaking. Her composure finally cracked, shattering into a million jagged pieces. You ungrateful little witch, she screamed, pointing a trembling finger at me. I gave you life. I put a roof over your head, and this is how you repay me, by dragging our private business into the street. You are destroying this family. Stella, you are ruining everything. She was screaming. Her face contorted into a mask of pure, unfiltered rage. It wasn't the rage of a mother who had been wronged. It was the rage of a narcissist who had been exposed. I didn't flinch. I didn't yell back. I just looked at the red light on the recording device sitting in the center of the table. I am not destroying the family, Mom, I said softly. I am just engaging in risk management. I hate you, Paula shrieked. I wish you had never been born. Paula Sterling, her lawyer, shouted, grabbing her arm. Stop talking. Sit down. But the damage was done. The recording was capturing every decibel of her hatred. I looked at her, heaving and red-faced, and I felt something strange. I expected to feel triumph. I expected to feel vindication. Instead, I felt release for my entire life. I had been chasing this woman's approval. I had wanted her to look at me the way she looked at Mason. I had wanted to be part of the inner circle. I had let their insults cut me because I thought their opinion mattered. But looking at her now, a criminal, a liar, a woman who would steal from her own mother, I realized something profound. I wasn't the black sheep. I was the escapee. I had survived them. I had built a life, a career, and a moral compass in spite of them. Their rejection hadn't been a punishment. It had been a protection. It kept me from becoming like them. You can scream all you want, Paula, I said, my voice steady. But screaming doesn't change the math. You stole $2 million. We found it. And now, you are going to pay. Paula collapsed back into her chair, burying her face in her hands. Mason was staring at the table, looking like a man who knew his life was over. Brooke was weeping silently. It was a total defeat. Talia leaned over and whispered in my ear, We have them. Stella, the civil case is a slam dunk. The criminal case is proceeding. But we can end this right now. How? I whispered back. The paper, Talia said, nodding toward Mags. The one you signed on Sunday, the integrity stipulation. I looked at Mags. She was watching me, her eyes bright with anticipation. She nodded. Talia reached into her briefcase and pulled out a single document. It wasn't the settlement agreement. It was the amended Dalton Family Trust, the one I had signed at the hotel. "Mr. Sterling," Talia said, her voice sharp, "your clients are worried about the $2 million. They are worried about jail, but they are forgetting something." She placed the document on the table. "They are forgetting the house," Talia said. "They are forgetting the stocks. They are forgetting the rest of the estate." Sterling picked up the document. He read the first page. He flipped to the back. He read the integrity stipulation. His face went gray. He looked at Paula. He looked at Mason. "My God," Sterling whispered. "What?" Paula snapped, lifting her head. "What is it?" "It is a poison pill," Sterling said, his voice trembling. "Paula, if Stella proves you misappropriated assets, the trust dissolves." "So," Mason said, "we build a new one." "No," Sterling said, dropping the paper like it burned him. "You don't understand. If this clause is triggered, you are disinherited, completely, the house in Briar Hollow. It goes to Stella, the investment account Stella, the residuals Stella." "Everything," Brooke whispered. "Everything," Talia confirmed. "The moment we file this with the probate court, which we can do this afternoon, you are not just facing criminal charges, you are homeless." The gravity of the situation hit them like a physical blow. They hadn't just lost the loot, they had lost the kingdom. "You wouldn't," Paula whispered, staring at Mags. "Mother, you wouldn't take the house. It is our home." "It was my home," Mags said coldly. "You just lived in it while waiting for me to die." Talia looked at me. "It is up to you, Stella," she said. "We can drag this out in court for years. We can let the feds do their job and fight over the scraps, or you can file this paper today. You can take control of the entire estate immediately." I looked at the document. It was the ultimate checkmate. It was the power to strip them of the status they cherished more than anything else. "I don't want to fight for years," I said. "I have a job, I have a life." I picked up the pen. "Wait," Mason shouted, standing up. "Stella, wait. We can make a deal. We can give you 50%, 70%. "You have nothing to offer, Mason," I said. "You are negotiating with currency you don't own." I looked at Paula. "You said I was worth $200. I said. "You wanted to see a reaction. You wanted a show." I clicked the pen. "Here is the finale." I looked at Talia. "File it," I said. The room erupted. Paula screamed. Mason lunged for the paper but was blocked by Silas. Brooke dissolved into hysterics. But I didn't hear them. I was looking at Mags. She gave me a small, fierce nod. We had won. But the paperwork wasn't the end. The end was the eviction. And that was happening next. The invitation for Christmas Part 2 arrived on Thursday morning. It was not a text or an email. It was a handwritten note on Paula's heavy cardstock, delivered by a courier. "Please come home. We are cooking dinner. No lawyers. No recording devices. Just family. We have a solution that works for everyone." It was the last gasp of a dying animal. They were ignoring the legal notices Talia had filed. They were ignoring the freezing orders. They had retreated into the only reality where they still held power, the dining room of the house in Briar Hollow. They truly believed that if they could just get me and Grandma Mags around a table with a roasted bird and some wine, they could bully us into submission one last time. I drove to the house at 7 o'clock. The driveway was full. Mason's leased BMW was there, though I knew the repo truck was probably 2 streets away. Brooke's Range Rover was parked crookedly on the lawn, likely because the bank had blocked her from entering her gated community. I walked up the steps. I didn't knock. I used my key. The scene inside was a grotesque parody of the night this all started. The tree was still lit. The jazz music was playing softly. Paula was wearing an apron, carrying a platter of stuffing. Mason was pouring wine. Brooke was setting the table. When I walked in, they all froze. Then, simultaneously, they put on their masks. "Stella," Paula exclaimed, wiping her hands on a towel. "You made it? I am so glad. Come, sit. We made your favorite stuffing." The one with the chestnuts, I asked, my voice flat. Yes, exactly, Paula beamed. See, we remember. I didn't sit. I stood by the archway. Where is Grandma? She is resting in the guest room, Mason said, stepping forward with a glass of red wine. She agreed to come. We thought it would be best to have a nice meal first, lower the temperature, and then look at the paperwork. Paperwork, I repeated. Just a revised internal agreement, Mason said, his smile tight. We found a way to liquidate some other assets to pay you the $300,000 cash immediately. No waiting for the bank unfreeze. We just need you to sign a waiver stating the previous wire was a clerical error. They were relentless. Even with the federal noose around their necks, they were still trying to hustle me. They genuinely thought I was stupid enough to trade a multi-million-dollar judgment for a quick cash payout that was likely funded by selling Paula's jewelry. I am not signing anything, Mason, I said. Stella, please, Brooke begged from the table. She looked haggard. I can't access my accounts. I can't buy groceries. You made your point. Just let us fix it. You can't fix it, I said. Of course we can, Paula insisted. We are family. Families fix things. Now, sit down. I will go get Mother. No need, a voice said from the hallway. I am already here. Mags walked into the room. She was not frail. She was not confused. She was wearing her best Sunday coat and carrying a thick leather portfolio. She didn't look at Paula. She walked straight to the head of the table, Paula's seat, and sat down. She placed the portfolio on the table with a heavy thud. Mother, Paula said nervously, that is my seat. Not anymore, Mag said. The air in the room shifted. The fake warmth evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard dread. We are not eating, Mags announced. We are finishing business. Okay, Mason said, trying to regain control. Business? Great. We have the settlement right here. He reached for a folder on the sideboard. Put that away. Mason, Mags commanded. The time for negotiation ended when you stole my identity and impersonated me on a bank call. We didn't, Mason started. Stop, Mags said. I have the transcript. She opened her portfolio. She didn't take out a single paper. She took out a stack of files, thick and bound with legal clips. For 30 years, Mag said, looking at each of them in turn. I wondered if I was the problem. I wondered if I had raised you to be wolves. Or if the world did that to you. I blamed myself. I thought if I just gave you enough, loved you enough, you would eventually become decent people. We are decent people, Paula cried, tears springing to her eyes. We take care of you. You take care of my checkbook, Mags corrected. There is a difference. She placed her hand on the files. The wire transfer of $2 million was real, Mag said. I intended for Stella to have it, but it was also a test. A test, Brooke whispered. I knew you were monitoring my accounts, Mag said. Arthur Henderson told me you had set up alerts. I knew that moving a sum that large would trigger your greed. I wanted to see if you would let me bless my granddaughter, or if you would intercept it. You baited us, Mason asked, his face turning red. You entrapped your own family. I gave you a choice, Mag said. You could have driven me to the bank and let me send the gift. You could have been happy for Stella. If you had done that, I would have left the rest of the estate to you three, the house, the stocks, the remaining land. It was all yours. Paula let out a strangled sound. But you didn't, Mags continued. You stole it. You created a shell company. You lied to my face. You tried to declare me insane. So what? Mason sneered, dropping the facade completely. You proved we like money. Congratulations. You can't cut us out. Grandma, the original trust is ironclad. We get the house. We get everything when you die. Mag smiled. It was a terrifying expression. You really should have read the amendments, she said. She slid the top file across the table. This is the revocable living trust of Marjorie Dalton. As amended 3 days ago, it has been notarized, filed, and registered with the county clerk. Mason snatched the file. He flipped through the pages, his hands shaking violently. This says, he choked on the words. It says that any beneficiary who attempts to defraud the grantor is immediately and permanently disinherited, Mag said calmly. It also invokes the penalty clause for the house. What penalty clause? Paula whispered. The one that says the property title transfers to the sole remaining beneficiary immediately upon proof of fraud, Mag said. The house isn't yours. Paula, it isn't mine. It belongs to Stella, as of 9 o'clock this morning. You can't, Paula screamed. You can't do this. I have lived here for 40 years. This is my home. It was a privilege, Mag said, and you abused it. I am not leaving, Paula yelled, grabbing a wineglass and hurling it at the wall. It shattered, spraying red wine like blood across the wallpaper. I am not leaving. You will have to drag me out. That can be arranged, I said. I walked to the front door and opened it. The driveway lights flooded the entryway. Standing on the porch were Silas, Arthur Henderson, and 4 federal agents wearing jackets emblazoned with Treasury Department. Mrs. Perry, Silas said, stepping into the foyer. We have a warrant to seize all electronic devices, financial records, and assets related to the SP Holdings investigation. We also have an eviction notice served by the new owner of the property, Ms. Stella Perry. No, Paula wailed, backing away. No, no, no. The agents moved efficiently. They didn't shout. They simply walked past Paula and began collecting phones. One agent went to the study to take the computer. Another went to Mason. Mr. Perry, the agent said, I need your watch and your car keys. They are listed as assets acquired with illicit funds. Mason looked at the agent, then at me. He slowly unclasped the Patek Philippe. The golden boy was finally being stripped of his gold. Brooke was sobbing in the corner. Stella, please, I didn't know, I just did what they told me. I walked over to the table where my phone was connected to the Bluetooth speaker system, the same system they had used to play Christmas jazz. I tapped the screen. A text message image appeared on the large television screen mounted above the fireplace. It was the screenshot from Christmas Eve. Brooke LOL. Give her $200 only. Watch her perform. I will set up the camera. You didn't know, I asked, pointing at the screen. You were the director. Brooke, you wanted a show. You wanted to watch me perform. Brooke stared at the screen, her face draining of color. She had no defense. Her own cruelty was projected in high definition. And that brings me to the last thing, Mag said. She stood up, leaning on her cane. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled envelope. It was the one I had left on the table that night, the one with the $200. Paula, Mag said, do you remember when I gave you this envelope to give to Stella? Paula looked up, her mascara running down her face. I switched it. Like you said, I made it $200. No, Mag said. I gave you an envelope with $200 in it, and I told you, give this to Stella until the wire clears. Paula froze. I wanted to see what you would do, Mag said. If you were a good mother, you would have handed it to her and said, Grandma loves you. Here is some cash for the holidays. But you didn't do that. Mags threw the envelope on the table. You took the money I gave you, and you pretended it was the only gift. You used my generosity as a weapon to humiliate your own daughter. You thought you were playing a prank on Stella, but you were just proving to me that you are incapable of kindness. The silence that followed was heavier than the grave. The twist hung in the air, suffocating them. They hadn't tricked Mags. They hadn't tricked me. They had walked face first into a character test, and they had failed so spectacularly that it cost them everything. Get out, I said. Stella, Paula whispered. Get out, I repeated. Take your clothes. Take your personal toiletries. Leave the furniture. Leave the jewelry. Leave the cars. You have 1 hour before the locks are changed. Mason looked at me with pure hatred. You are going to regret this. You will be alone. I have been alone in this house for 34 years, I said. Tonight is the first time I feel crowded. I turned my back on them. I walked over to Mags. She looked tired, but her eyes were shining. She held out her arm. Ready to go. Grandma, I asked. Where are we going? She asked. I booked us a suite at the plaza, I said. And tomorrow, we are going to Montana. I hear the land is beautiful this time of year. It is, she said. We walked out of the dining room, past the federal agents who were boxing up Paula's computer, past Brooke who was hyperventilating on the sofa, past Mason who was arguing about his car keys. We walked out the front door into the cold, crisp winter air. I didn't look back at the house. I didn't look back at the perfect wreath on the door or the twinkling lights in the windows. I looked at my car. I looked at the road. For the first time in my life, I didn't owe anyone an explanation. I didn't need to apologize for existing. I didn't need to shrink to fit into their frame. They had tried to eat my future, but they choked. I opened the car door for Mags. She settled in and patted my hand. "Checkmate," she whispered. "Checkmate." I agreed. I started the engine and drove away, leaving the ruins of the Perry dynasty in the rearview mirror, finally, completely, and wonderfully free. Thank you so much for listening to the story of Stella Perry and her ultimate checkmate. If you enjoyed seeing justice served cold, please tell me in the comments where you are tuning in from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Don't forget to subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like this video, and smash that hype button so we can bring more tales of karma and redemption to the world. See you in the next one.